Hey everybody, happy Wednesday and welcome to another Wednesday live training. Let me give Facebook a second to make sure it is working like it's supposed to. Hopefully we just started getting some thunder here, sorry. Okay, started getting some thunder here in Nashville out of nowhere. I didn't even realize it was supposed to storm or rain today, but just as I was getting ready to go live, I hearing thunder. I was like, oh, well, I doubt y'all can hear that. It's kind of quiet. But this could get interesting. Hopefully we don't have any issues. So today's topic is a big one, and it is one that is important, and it's a really common thing that I hear. And the topic this week, or for today, is on emotional eating or stress eating. I feel like everyone to some degree or some extent has experienced emotional eating or stress eating, and I think it sort of disproportionately affects women. So that's why I chose this particular topic for us this week. So it is easily one of the top 2 or 3, if not the number 1 thing that I hear and I read when people are joining our group. They answer those questions, and I would probably, if for every 5 people that join the group, at least 3 of them will mention something about stress eating or emotional eating in that section. So I felt like this was a really big one that seems to impact more of us than not, and maybe even more people than who actually even type it on that form. So I figured this was a really an important one, and maybe a helpful one to do this week. So as always, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments as we go, feel free to put them down in the comments. If you have ideas for future live topics, please also put that down in the comments. I would love to hear what you want to hear. It makes my life a lot easier. Coming up next week, if you haven't seen yet, we're going to talk about reverse dieting. What is reverse dieting? How do you reverse diet? And how do you know when you need to reverse diet? So that's all coming up next week. So make sure you RSVP for that if you haven't already. And let's go ahead and start rolling. We're going to talk about emotional eating. So like I said, it's the most common thing that I see when people join the group that they mention in those questions is about how emotional eating or stress eating and kind of the impact that that has on whether or not you achieve your health goals, or whether or not, but how quickly you achieve your health and fitness goals. So most of us have struggled with this, or maybe not struggle, but experienced it at least at some point in time in our lives. And like I said earlier, disproportionately women are affected by emotional eating than men. And there's a reason for that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So I want to start this live with a very important fact that is really important for us to know and understand as we start to learn about this, and when you start kind of applying this to yourself and learning about how some of these things apply to you and impact you. I want to really reinforce the idea that emotional eating or stress eating in and of itself is not an inherently bad thing. It can make us prolong how quickly we achieve our goals. But it's not bad, like quote bad. I hate the air quotes, but you know what I'm saying, bad. I want all of us to kind of work on distancing ourselves from using the words good or bad when we're talking about food. So we have food that helps us get closer to our goals. We have food that might make it take longer for us to get to our goals. We have food that has more nutrients in it, or we have food that is not as nutrient dense. But no food is good or bad. Food does not have a moral value, and by labeling our food and our habits around food as good and bad, kind of takes us down a little bit of a slippery slope of disordered thinking. Okay, so we want to try to eliminate the good and bad from our vocabulary and from our thinking, because what a lot of times by labeling our foods as good and bad, it sort of has this way of morphing into labeling ourselves as good and bad when it comes to food. Surely you have said it or heard it, particularly depending on how old you are. I remember my mom and like that generation definitely saying things like, ooh, I've been bad, I had a piece of cake. There's nothing bad about eating a piece of cake, y'all. You ate a piece of cake. If that's bad, then I'm the worst, okay? So we start calling ourselves bad with regards to food, and then that ultimately ends up impacting a lot of our thought processes around food. So that's what I want to start with. Emotional eating in and of itself is not, quote, bad, okay? But how do we know when this is becoming a problem for us? So 4 things I want you to think about. Number 1, if the emotional or stress eating leaves you feeling worse than you did before you ate. So that can be immediately right after you're done, or it can be down the line. If you end up feeling worse about it, then that's a problem. Number 2, it's a problem when it is something that is causing you health issues like digestive problems, or worse yet, disordered eating, or even worse, eating disorders. Whether those eating disorders are around restricting food because we did the emotional eating, or if that eating disorder is a binge eating disorder where we're going way over the top due to our emotions. Number 3, if the end result of this emotional eating is guilt or shame, that's a problem. And then finally, number 4, and this is a big one, when eating is your number 1 coping strategy when it comes to high stress or high emotion situations. If your auto reaction is to go to food, then this is a problem that we really want to take some time to explore and get a handle on. And I think that that's honestly probably a lot of us, because we've seen it in the movies all the time, right? This woman, she breaks up with her boyfriend, or she finds out her husband is cheating, or whatever the case may be. And then what's the very next scene that you see in the movie? She's sitting on the couch in big oversized pajamas, her hair's all over the place, her makeup is smeared, there's some romantic comedy on TV, or some, Maury Povich or some kind of trash TV is on, and she's sitting there with a spoon eating the ice cream straight out of the tub, right? How many times? I feel like I can't place the movie, but I feel like I can see Renee Zellweger on a couch doing exactly that in my head when I say it. But we see this all the time. It's to the point where it's like literally a cliche anymore. We feel like when these things happen to us, that's what we're supposed to do because I saw it on TV, right? But that's really not the case. And so that's really not what we're supposed to do. And I guess it depends on what you're watching. If it happens to be the Lifetime channel, the next logical step clearly is murder, but that's a training for a different day. But the emotional eating thing, the ice cream, the I'm a disaster, I haven't showered in 5 days thing, it's just sort of become a cliche, and it's just what we do because it's what we see, right? We emulate, and we really want to be careful how media is influencing us. So the real question that I want you to ask yourself is this: is emotional eating or stress eating making me feel better, or is it making me feel worse? If the answer is worse, then we need some management around this ASAP. So women in particular are often told, don't be so emotional, calm down, you're being emotional. We even hear these ridiculous things like women can't be in charge of things because they're too emotional. And these messages come from society along with men in our lives, and because, thank you, social media, even out of our lives. We hear these things, and it has a lot of us just sort of stuffing our feelings down. It prevents us from finding healthy outlets for dealing with our feelings, which then creates stress, even more stress, frustration. It's just exhausting. And then what do? We go alone somewhere and we just eat food because we don't know what else to do because we're over here being told to stop being emotional. And so honestly, y'all, I'm going to warn you now, if you have delicate ears, plug them, because I'm about to say some words that you might not want to hear, but I'm going to be 100% for real right here. The next time someone tells you to stop being so emotional, I honestly would love for you to just tell them to fuck off. Handle you, be you, take care of your shit the way you know is best for you, because those emotions are what make every single one of us as women a fucking force to be reckoned with, and we should never be stuffing that shit into a tub of ice cream. Ooh, all right? So, me get me up on my soap. I'm about to stand up and walk around this place right now. So for real, the next time somebody tells you that, that you don't need to listen to a thing that they are saying, because those emotions are what make you freaking fantastic, and stop stuffing them in places where they don't belong. Okay. So with that said, now I feel like I need to handle my emotions right now. I'm like on 10, my heart is racing. So, let's talk about healthier ways to handle these. I might need to take some of my own tips in a minute when I get off of this thing. So the number one strategy that I want from you is, or not want from you, but want to give you is kind of focused a little bit around distraction. So journaling, I'm sure this is not new for a lot of you, but I'm going to give you some kind of specific things to put into your journal, or things to think about as you're journaling. So the first thing I want you to think about is I want you to rate the stress or those emotions on a scale. So you can kind of choose that scale, whether it's like a 1 through 5 or a 1 through 10. I like a 1 through 10 scale personally, but you choose. So 1 being not a big deal, 10 or 5 or whatever you choose being like, okay, top level stress. So I like 1 through 10. And by doing this, it helps you put things into perspective, because sometimes when our immediate, those feelings come on in the immediate moment, we just feel like they're a 10 all of a sudden. When if we really stop to think about it, it's like, okay, maybe that's like a 4. Maybe that's not so much a 10. And so it really helps you to put things into perspective. And that perspective changes our kind of shifts our mindset, right? When I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is ridiculous. I need to eat pizza right now. Okay, hold on a second. Let me rate this. This is really probably a 3 or a 4 or a 5. Then it's like, all right, maybe I don't really need the ice cream so much, right? So just kind of a little bit of perspective that helps you stop and think, is my response to this appropriate? Okay, so you're gonna rate your stress. That's the first thing you're gonna write down. And then the second thing is I want you to just write down what are like the top 2, 3, 4 things that are stressing you out the most right in that moment. So identify it, call it by name, call it what it is. And then after you've done that, I want you to just vent, okay? So get it all out, get it on paper. Everything you're feeling, write it all out. Think about those 2, 3, whatever things you wrote down, however many you wrote down, and write down how you're feeling about those things. So whether it's something where you're like, feel like you're venting to a friend, right? And just get it all down on paper, get it all out of your system. That's strategy number 1. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. Number 2, at times when you're not feeling stressed, identify actions that you can take to control the stress when it comes. So this could mean setting up recurring appointments with your therapist. This might be meeting up with a friend regularly for a cup of coffee. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's journaling, like we mentioned above. Maybe it's taking a walk or some sort of spiritual practice, whether it's going to church or yoga or meditation, any kind of a, spiritual whatever, however that applies to you in your life. There is no right or wrong here, and there is no limit to how many possibilities it could be. So when you're not stressed, identify those things that help you to feel better. And stress management as a whole is better done being in a proactive way rather than a reactive way. So thinking about it ahead of time so you know what skills to fall back on, that's going to be the key. So in fact, I would love it if y'all that are watching, whether you're watching right now live or if you're watching on the replay, if you could go into the comments and just type out a couple of things, 1, 2, 3, however many, million, I don't care. Write down a few things that you feel like you can do to help handle stress when it does come. And we want to be doing those things on the regular. Don't just have this list and say, I will go for a walk, and then wait until you get super stressed to go for a walk. Take walks regularly, because what will happen is when you're handling these stressors as they come, and in advance, I should say, when they come along, you're already in this mode of handling stress, right? You're already in this space of being able to do these things by default because you're doing it even when you're not stressed. It's kind of a second nature thing. So maybe something that previously would get you up to an 8, because you have these things in place where you're handling stress as we go, maybe those things are only going to come up to a 5 now. Okay, so think about these things now, and I'd love for y'all to start putting those in the comments. If we can make a nice list of a lot of people to kind of look at and get some ideas from, I think that would be pretty rad. So while you put those in the comments, I'm going to move on to the next thing. So once you have done these things, so the journaling, and whatever it is that you're typing in the comments right now that you know that you can fall back on to handle stress. Once you've done those things, if you're still feeling like you want a bowl of ice cream, have some ice cream. Remember, stress eating in and of itself is not bad. But now that you've taken a little bit of time to distract yourself, whether it's with your journaling or taking a walk or calling a friend or whatever, then you're a lot more inclined to be aware and conscious of what you're doing. So rather than going over the top and eating the whole tub of ice cream, you might actually scoop out one serving, satisfy that craving, and move on with your day. So do you kind of see the difference? It's not a bad thing to go ahead and eat the ice cream if you're craving it, or the bag of chips or whatever. But maybe instead of the whole bag, once we've taken some time to distance ourselves, identify the issue, label it with a number, perspective, now it's like, all right, I'll just have a serving of the potato chips instead of the entire bag of the potato chips, okay? So to wrap up, I want you to get yourself a notebook, or maybe even make like a document in your phone, like in the notes app of your phone. If you don't walk around with notebooks, I don't know who does that, but then just so you have we all have our phones on us most of the time. So create a document in your notes app that, call it whatever you want to call it, and that can be your space where you go to type. Isn't it funny how we type now? It's like video games. There's my fingers type. But so that can be where you have your venting session. So once you go in there and you're like, okay, I am not going to eat this whole bag of chips. Let me take a minute. Let me rate this stress right now. Let me identify it. Let me vent about it for a minute. It's a control. It's a control thing, right? So once we learn to control our bodies and our minds, you control your mind tells your body what to do, right? So when you find yourself instinctually going for that food, you stop. Nope. Before I do this, I have to do this note-taking activity or journaling. I need to go for a walk. I need to whatever. Then it pauses that impulse to run to the fridge and to have that emotional eating be the first coping strategy that you have. It's okay if that's a coping strategy. It's not really okay if it's the first and the only coping strategy that we have, okay? So once you've distracted, you're making better, more rational decisions about what you're eating, how much you're eating. Is this going to help me achieve my goals? Is it not? And how much do I care in this moment? Because sometimes we don't, and it's okay that sometimes we get a little bit off track. So finally, remember, emotional eating is not bad, and you are not bad for doing it. You're a human, and food is just food. So keep your goals at the forefront of your mind, because nobody else is going to keep your goals at the forefront of their mind. Only you, and only you can control that. So owning that behavior and owning the response, however you respond to the stress and to the emotions, is incredibly empowering, because sometimes when we're in these high stress situations, everything feels super out of control, but you can control you can control how you respond to it. So having these backup plans for things that you can do instead of running to the kitchen or running to the potato chips or running to the ice cream, when you have these other strategies that you can start with, get everything in check, and then go have a reasonable amount of whatever you might be craving, that's where the real wins are. Think about how empowering that would be to have that control over something in a moment where you're feeling like life is completely out of control. Okay, so what questions do you have? Go ahead and post thoughts, comments, questions in the comments down below. I would always love to hear what other topics you would like to hear more about. Remember to use hashtag NSV this week to be in the drawing to be entered for a gift card on Friday. We do this every single week. So this week is NSV. You're talking to us in the creating posts in the group about your non-scale victories. That's what NSV stands for. Remember that you can be entered up to 5 times for the drawing on Friday. And I would love to get some new faces and names in this drawing. I feel like Krista and Kelly are winning all, they're taking all my money, y'all. I'm going to give my money to other people too. So go ahead and make sure you're posting in the group. Feel free to invite friends to our group if you feel like they might benefit from anything that we've got going on here. And I will catch y'all later. Drink your water, eat your protein, and I would love for you to go do something new this week. Have a great week. I'll see you on Friday.